الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So we continue reading from Tadrib al-Masalik أو Tadrib al-Salik إلى أقرب المسالك في مذهب Imam Malik رضي الله عنه. And in the last session we had begun the chapter dealing with Zakat, or the obligatory charity that every able and Muslim meeting the specific requirements is obligated to pay. So we had covered what is called Zakat al-Naqdain or Zakat al-Ain. So in Naqdain, Naqd means to pay something in cash, and in the pre-modern world, gold and silver were that which was used to pay things. It was the form of currency, and they remain so to this day. However, now we have all our different forms of currency, of world currencies, and they take the place of gold, even though they don't exactly have removed gold from the market. But for all intents and purposes, they are used as legal tender. So then we consider the same rules to apply in terms of riba, in terms of which a chapter we'll get to later, about interest and usury, and also about zakat. So we had covered that part, and now we had arrived at the section dealing with zakat and na'am. So the zakat of animal husbandry or of foreign animals. And the word in Arabic, and na'am, means from the root word of ni'mah, of blessing, and it was seen that having these animals was a form of blessing. And definitely in the Arabian Peninsula of the Prophet ﷺ, having a number of these animals, specifically camels, which were the ones that were most available, was seen as wealth, having a number of them. And we know the story of the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, Abdul Muttalib, and that fi Am al-Fil, in the year of the elephant, when Abraha al-Ashram, Abraha came with his army intending to destroy the Kaaba, and he met with the leader of Banu Hashim, Abdul Muttalib, and the leader of Mecca. And he said, his grandfather Abdul Muttalib said that, you had taken my camels on the way here and I need them back. And then Abraha was astounded and said, why are you asking about the camels? Aren't you not concerned about Mecca and the Kaaba? And then when he said his very famous maqula, أما البيت فهناك رب يحميه وأما البيت فلرب يحميه. As for the house, there's the Lord that will protect it. So, and as we said in the last session, zakat has a dual purpose. One, it is the kind of the main form of social welfare in the Islamic system, and number two, it is a means by which where people can purify their wealth. And so we've said before that the Sharia acknowledges reality as it is, not some sort of abstract utopia that we want it to be. So that means that given the difficulty in having a 100% halal income without any sort of shubuhat, any sort of ambiguous nature to it, then the institution of zakah is there to help us purify our wealth. And so the main beneficiary then of the zakah, of the charity, is the one giving it, even perhaps to a greater extent than the one receiving it. And that should be the attitude when one is giving it. Wallahu a'lam. So to start our section, Fasl fi Zakat al-Na'am, this section dealing with the zakah of farm animals. And we will see, as we, I think, went over in the last session, there's kind of three broad categories, namely camels, and then what's called al-ghanam, which are sheep and goats, and then baqar, cows, which would also include anything that is a relative of the cow, like the water buffalo, as you find in some countries, especially in the Mediterranean and in Africa. So he says, رضي الله عنه, من ملك خمسا من الإبل أو أقل ونتجت فحال عليه الحول وهي 5 أو أكثر بأصلها أو بنتاجها فعليه شاء من جل غنم البلد تجزئ في الأضحية وفي العشر شاتان وفي 15 ثلاث وفي 20 أربع. So he begins talking about the zakat of ibil, which are camels. And he said, whoever has 5 camels, so if you're a rancher and you have at least 5 camels, أو أقل, or less, ونتجت فحال عليه الحول. And this is the important part here. So if you have 5 or less, let's say you have 4, but one of them gave birth, and it has been a year since you owned the 4, and then comes the year, and now they're 5. So the one gave birth a month before, a year passed, and you had owned the 4. But at the end of the year, now you own 5. That means you've met the nisab. You've met the requisite amount, and you would have to pay the zakat on the 5 because it's considered nitaj, as the word that he used here. Natajat, nitaj, yani. It's a product of the original 4. Just like when we talked about zakat al-ayn, when we talked about the zakat of gold and silver or currency, that if you sold something for profit and then you realize the profit within the year and that brought you over the nisab, over the requisite amount, then you'd have to pay zakat on that whole amount. Wallahu a'lam. So, حال الحول, so the two conditions are you have 5, so that's already given, or you have less than 5, let's say you had 3, or you had 4, and then they produced 1 or they produced 2. In other words, they made 5 before the end of the year. فَعَلَيْهِ شَاء. Then what does he have to pay? A sheep. And you might say, well, he has camels. How is he going to pay a sheep? We go by the aada. The custom was that if you had camels, you usually had other animals too. So it wasn't just camels, but you also had sheep, you may have goats, so forth. Because for him to give up one of the 5 camels, that's too much. So in terms of the value of a sheep next to a camel, sheep is much less. So they'd give up a sheep. If they didn't have the sheep, then they would have to give the qima, like the value of it, and purchase a sheep. But that would still be way less than having to sell or to give away one of the camels that they have. So عليه شاء من جل غنم البلد, right? From that which is the majority or the type of sheep that are in that particular town or that locale or that country. تجزئ في الأضحية. تجزئ في الأضحية means it meets the same requirements, the same conditions as when we do in the dhabah or the udhiyah of Eid. So that means it has to be like a year old or close to a year, sound, healthy, so forth. That type of sheep. وفي العشر شاتان. If you have 10 camels, then you give 2 sheep. وفي 15 ثلاث. If you have 15 camels, 3 sheep. وفي 20 أربع. And then if you have 20 camels, 4. وفي 25 بنت مخاض دخلت في الثانية. This is where it changes. If you have 25 camels, now you're going to start paying out in camels because now you have the amount instead of sheep. So something called bint makhad, which is a camel that has passed 1 year of age and is not quite 2 yet, so between 1 and 2 years of age. This is what they call bint makhad. From 1 to 2 years of age. وفي 36 and in 36. So here what they say, beginning with 25 till 35, you're going to pay 1 camel that's a year old and less than 2 years old. So when it says في 36, then in 36, then that's when you get to the new category. بنت لبون دخلت في الثالثة. Now you're going to something that's بنت لبون, which means a camel now that can produce milk, hence the name labun. Bint makhad means one that can get pregnant. Bint labun means one that can produce milk. So at this point you would have to pay one of those camels that you have, which is one that has passed 2 years, made 2 years of age, but not quite. not quite 3. So it's in its third year, but it's not 3 yet. وفي 46, and then 46, so that means up to 37, up to 46, you have to pay the bint labun, which is one camel that's not quite 3 yet, but over 2. So في 46, then beginning with 46, حقة دخلت في الرابعة. That means one that's 3 and it's into its 4th year. And then at 51, 61, 61 ففيها جذعة دخلت في الخامسة. Then you have to pay جذعة, which is one a full-bred camel, and that's something that has over 4 years and entered into the 5th year. That's at 61. إلى 76 ففيها بنت لبون. And then at 76, if you have 76 camels, then you have to give 2 of the bint labun, which is the one that is over 2 and less than 3. إلى 91 ففيها حقتان. If you have 91, once you get to 91, then you give 2 حقة or حقتان, which means that those that are over 3 and entered into the 4th year, not quite 4. إلى 120, then at 120, فإن زادت إلى 29 ففي حقتان أو 3 بنات لبون الخيار للساعي وتعين الموجود. وفي 130 حقة وبنت لبون، ثم امضي على هذا في كل 50 حقة وفي كل 40 بنت لبون، وما زاد دون العقد وقص، والوقص هو الذي لا يزيد المفروض به والله أعلم. So just to summarize then at the end, if you get to 120, or like 121 up until 129, then you have to do حقتان أو 3 بنات لبون. So the حقة, as we said, one that has entered into its 4th year, so it's over 3. So you can give 2 of those, or 3 of the Banat Labun, which are the ones that have entered into their 3rd year, yani over 2 and entered into the 3rd year. والخيار, he says, للسعي. Who is the sa'i? وتعين الموجود. The sa'i is, again, when there's a system in place, there used to be someone who would go from a representative of the government called the sa'i, the one who strives and to go, and would go out to each farm and would assess how many that he has, the farmer, and then, or the rancher, and then assess the amount of zakat to be paid, and then the sa'i would actually be responsible for taking the appropriate young camels with him, or the sheep, or whatever it may be, whatever the case may be, back to be distributed for the zakat. So the sa'i then would choose whether I take 2 haqqa or 3 bint labun. And he says, وَتَعَيْنِ الْمَوْجُود, right? Also, it depends on what's present. Maybe you don't have 2 haqqa, maybe they're all young. So again, it depends on what's there. وفي 130 حقة وبنت لبون. So once you hit 130, then you have to do 1 haqqa, which is one that is entering to its 4th year. And 2 of the bint labun, and 2 that are entering to their 3rd year. And then ثم امضي على هذا في كل 50 حقة. Then after that, in every 50 that goes above the 130, you have a haqqa. And then every 40, you have bint labun, one that's entering to its 3rd year. وما زاد دون العقد وقص, and as we mentioned earlier, and that which goes beyond the category level, so like 122, 123, 121 and above, so you got into a new category, waqs. والوقص هو الذي لا يزيد المفروض به. So whether you have 121 or 126, you're still going to pay the same amount. That's what that means. Wallahu a'lam. So I don't know how many camel farmers are with us right now, but if you do have camels, now you know how much you have to pay if you have camels. The next section, في زكاة البقر والغنم. So now we're talking about cows and ghanam and sheep. And I should mention that the camels applies to both types of camels, which are the dromedaries, which are the single hump, and the Bactrian camels, which are the Asian ones that have 2 humps. So both of those, the zakat would be payable on both of them. I haven't seen anyone say anything specifically talk about llamas, though they are kind of like the camel of South America. But I lean, I'm not giving a fatwa, but I lean for those who farm llamas and they have that amount. I would say that the hukum, the ruling would apply as well, because they're like a camel without a hump. So they meet a similar purpose, I think, for people in South America, and our ulama didn't go to South America until maybe a century or two ago. So Allah alam, didn't have exposure to such an animal before that. So now we move on to zakat al-baqar wal-ghanam. So cows and sheep and goats. He says لا زكاة في البقر حتى يحول عليه الحول وهي 30 بأصلها أو مع نتاجها ففيها تبيع أوفى سنتين. He said there's no zakat in cows until the year has passed and you have 30 original cows, أو مع نتاجها, or you had less than 30, but then the births during the year made 30, like we talked about the camels. So then in that case, then that's when the zakah begins. فَفِيهَا تَبِيعٌ أَوْفَى سَنَتَيْن. التَّبِيع means the cow that has reached 2 years of age. So one of those for the first 30. وفي الأربعين مسنة دخلت في الرابعة إلى 59. So from 40 to 95, then you'd have to pay one cow that's called a musinna, which means it has entered into the 4th year. So 3 and above, 3 to 4 years of age. وفي الستين تبيعان. Once you have 60 cows, then you would have to do 2 tabi'a, which are 2 that are 2 years or older. ثم في كل 40 مسنة وفي كل 30 تبيع. Then in every 40 that's above that, you're going to pay a musinna, which is one that has more than 3 and entered to its 4th year. وفي كل 30 تبيع. And in every 30 above that, so 40 or 30, depending on, add them 2 numbers up, then you're going to have to do a tabi'a, which is one that has reached 2 years of age and entered into its 3rd year. وما زاد دون العقد وقص. And as we said with the camels, the in-between numbers is the same amount. So it's each category. So from 1 to 29, no zakat for a cow. From 30 to 39, tabi'a, which is one that has completed 2 years of age. From 40 to 59, musinna, which is one that has completed 4 years of age. And then 60 and above, as we said, in every 30, you have a tabi'a. And then in every 40, you have a musinna. And in this case, that which is from the same categories, like if you're a cow farmer and you have different types of cows, they're all one category. So if you have different species of cow, I should say, then يضم لبعض, يعني you add them up together. They're not separate. Like if I only have 20 of these and 20 of these, and then I don't pay zakat, no, you have 40, and you pay zakat, choosing. And then at that point, you take from this group or from that group. If they're about the same, then you try to split it evenly. If not, then the one that's more. So that's in terms of cows. Then he moves on to al-ghanam, which is sheep and goats. ولا زكاة في الغنم حتى يحول عليه الحول وهي 40 بأصلها أو بنتاجها ففيها شاة. So you don't have to pay zakat on sheep and goats until you have 40. Then you pay one shah, one sheep or one goat. إلى 121 ففيها شاتان. Up until 121, so from 40 to 120, you only pay one sheep. From 121 onwards, you're going to pay 2, up to 200, up to 199, I should say. And then at 200, you are going to pay 3 sheep. وفي 400 أربعة. And then at 400, you're going to pay 4 sheep. ثم في كل 100 شاة. So anything above 400, for every 100 sheep that you have, you pay 100. So if you have 500, 5 sheep. 600, 6 sheep. هكذا. وما زاد دون المئة وقص, as we said. So that which is in between categories, there's no extra you have to pay. وتضم البخاتي للعراب والجواميس للبقر والماعز للضأن. And we just said this. So البخاتي, which is the Bactrian camel, للعراب, which is the dromedary. Those two are one category. والجواميس للبقر, and water buffaloes and cows are one category. والماعز للضأن, and goats and sheep are one category. So if you have 30 goats and 10 sheep, then you have to pay 1 goat or sheep as zakah. And since the goats are more, then you can pay from the goats. ويشترط لزكاة الأنعام مع الحول مجيء السعي إن كان ثم سعي. And it's also a condition for the zakat of these animals. In addition to the hawl, that the year passes, مجيء الساعي, the government representative to come out and take it. إن كان ثم سعي, if there is one. If there is not one, then you are going to be responsible to take care of that yourself. وعلم أن ما استفيد من النعم قبل الحول يضم إلى ما قبله إن كان نصابا. And he says, know that that which you get from animals before the year is over, you add it to the group if you already had the nisab. So that which you bought or that which was gifted to you or you inherited it, you add it only if you had nisab, not if you have less than nisab, it doesn't count. If you had the nisab already, then you count it to the nisab and then you pay on the whole thing. And that concludes the section of Zakat al-An'am, or al-Na'am, of animals. Then the last type of zakah, before we get onto the categories or the recipients of zakah, is zakat al-thimar wal-hubub. So this is the zakah of crops and seeds. So the Maliki, they have kind of a few conditions for determining, well, what's zakatable in terms of crops and seeds. And usually the idea is that it's something that's lil-qut, something that's a staple thing to live on. You know, before modern refrigeration systems and things like that, and easy access to supermarkets, people actually had to store what they would need for the year because things were seasonal, right? Once you harvest, at harvest time, you get all of the grains and the seeds that you need, and then there's no other harvest for it till a year later. So you'd actually have to acquire all of that at the beginning of that harvest time and then store it for the coming year. And this used to be the case not just in the Muslim world, but everywhere, you know, and before pre-modern electricity and the Industrial Revolution, that's how people lived. And they'd have these big grain silos that they store the grain in and so forth. And the same thing for, you know, their own animals and things like this. So one is al-qut, that it's a staple part of their diet, and also that it can be stored, it's storable, so not perishable. That's why there's no zakat on fruits in the Maliki school, like oranges, apples, grapes. So you don't pay zakat. If you have a vineyard, you're going to pay zakat, but you're going to pay zakat on the proceeds from the vineyard, not from the actual grapes themselves, or not from the actual raisins. There is a zakat, but that's when it's dried. But let's say, you know, oranges, apples, things like that, you'd only pay from the proceeds. And you wouldn't give a bushel or X number of bushels of apples or oranges in zakat, but you pay from the proceeds. So that would be the zakat al-tijara, the zakat of someone who has a business. So he says, رحمه الله, لا زكاة في شيء من ذلك حتى يبلغ 5 أوسق وهي 300 صاع بصاع الفطرة. So he said there's no zakah in any of these things until it reaches a volume. So the wasaq or the awsuq, it's a measure of volume, not a measure of weight, but we will give the equivalent weight. 5 awsuq. And what is this wasaq? It's 300 sa' bi sa' al-fitra. What is a sa'? 4 amdad. What's a mud? The outstretched hands of the Prophet ﷺ. So we say mud al-Nabi ﷺ, how much he can hold in his 2 hands like this, which is about 3 cups or so. So the equivalent of 5 of these awsuq, it's about, there's 2 different opinions depending upon which scale that you used, but somewhere from 540 or 650 kilograms. So double that, 2 times 2.2 in terms of pounds. So we have to say at least, over 1,000 pounds. You have to, your harvest has to be over 1,000 pounds, or actually over 1,300 pounds, closer to 1,500 pounds, for you to have to pay zakat on the proceeds from your harvest. فإن سقيت أو فإن سقيت بآلة ففيها نصف العشر وإلا فالعشر. He said, if it has been irrigated artificially mean bi'ala, with a tool, like you had to get the well water yourself, or you had to irrigate it yourself, and there was a cost involved in doing that. فَفِيهَا نِصْفُ الْعُشْرِ, then you'd have to pay 5% of that proceeds, of whatever 1,500 pounds that's there, or 650 kilograms. وَإِلَّا فِي الْعُشْرِ, otherwise, if it's irrigated naturally by rainwater, by aquifer, by river water, fresh water that comes from, like the delta in the Nile region in Egypt, then al-ushr, then 10% of that. If you receive artificial irrigated water for free, like the government provides it to you, like in some parts of the Arabian Peninsula, as the author mentions here, then that's considered also as if it was naturally irrigated, because it's not costing you anything to do that. So also you'd have to pay 10%, not the 5%. وهذا القدر من زيت ما له زيت أو حبه إلا الزيتون فمن زيته وإلا فمن ثمنه كما لا يجف من عنب أو رطب. So let me just, we mentioned this in the last session in the beginning, but let's just mention it again because to refresh our memory. That the zakatable crops are namely dates and raisins and wheat and barley, corn, millet, rice, the sult, which is a specific another type of barley, al-alas, which is a type of wheat that's in the Mediterranean. So those in terms of al-hubub, and then al-qattani sab'a, which are the 4 types of oils, which include sesame oil, red radish oil, olive oil, and safflower oil, or like sunflower oil. Those are the 4 that oils are made out of them. And then the actual peas, which would include chickpeas, hummus, fool, which is fava, lubia, which is cow pea, adas, lentil, a turmus, which is called a lupin bean, a julban, which is the Indian cow pea, al-bisilla, which is regular peas. So all of those things that are stored and also are a staple part of the diet, they're all zakatable. And outside of those things are not. So he says here, وهذا القدر من زيت ما له زيت أو حبه إلا الزيتون فمن زيته. So the 4 types that produce oil: olive oil, safflower oil, radish oil, and sesame oil. You can give from the seed itself or from the oil after you've pressed the oil. Except for olive oil, you have to give it in oil. Unless if it's a type of olive that doesn't get pressed into oil, then you give it in terms of the olives. Otherwise, if it's used primarily for its oil, then you have to give it in terms of its oil. ولا يجزئ إخراجها إلا بعد الجفاف. عفوا وإلا فمن ثمنه كما لا يجف من عنب أو رطب. So if you're not able to give in terms of the oil, that's in terms of the olive oil, then because you sold it already, or there's no more left, you don't have any more to give, whatever the case may be, then from whatever proceeds from the thaman, from what you sold it for, in that amount, 5 or 10%, depending upon how you irrigated it, then you would have to pay that. كما لا يجف من عنب أو رطب. And the same thing for grapes and ripe dates, not dried dates. If you sell them as ripened dates, or you sell the grapes and you don't sell the raisins, then in this case you would have to pay from the proceeds of that and not give it in terms of grapes or of raisins. And the illah for that, the reason for that, now that I think about it, is because olives are perishable. If you give someone a ton of olives and not in oil, it's not going to last. It's perishable. It's going to spoil. Whereas the other things, saffron and sesame and red radish will not spoil. Same thing for grapes and ripened and dates that are not dried. Grapes will spoil unless they are dried into raisins, then they could be stored. Same thing for dates that are not dried. If they're still fresh and ripe and not dried, then they will also spoil. So that's why it has to be given in terms of its oil or from the proceeds of the oil for those particular ones, or in terms of grapes and ripe dates from the proceeds of that, and not from if you don't have the dried versions. وَلَا يُجْزِئُ إِخْرَاجُهَا إِلَّا بَعْدَ الْجَفَافِ. And that's what he says here. And it's not permissible to give it, to pay out in terms of zakat, إِلَّا بَعْدَ الْجَفَافِ, except after it has been dried. And that's in terms of grapes and dates. والوجوب بطيب الثمر وإفراك الحب فمن باع بعده فعليه الزكاة وجاز شرطها على المشتري إن أمن. And when does it become obligatory? الوجوب بطيب الثمر. So when does zakah become applicable? طيب الثمر, when the fruits are ripe. So like grapes, if you taste it and it's sweet, then it's ripe, then your vineyard, all of it, the zakah becomes due. وإفراك الحب. إفراك الحب means that the seeds themselves also are ready to be used and to be eaten, or you can press oil out of them like olives and sesame. فمن باع بعده فعليه الزكاة. So whoever sells all of it, so there's none left, فعليه الزكاة. You still have to pay the zakah. So I had the vineyard, it's ripe, I sold it, or I sold the vineyard, but it happened, like the wujub, the time of obligation came upon me, I am responsible for the zakah at that point, no matter what happens to the grapes. Unless there was a natural disaster, as they say, like they had a frost or something, tsunami, something like that, destroyed your vineyard or destroyed your olive trees, whatever it might be. Or for our brothers and sisters in Palestine, who get their olive trees routinely destroyed by the occupying army, then in this case, they would not be responsible to pay for the zakah, for the part that was destroyed. وَجَازَ شَرْطُهَا عَلَى الْمُشْتَرِي إِنْ أُمِنْ. This is a different mas'ala, but if someone is buying these things, then they can have as a condition, I will buy this when it ripens, and then that's a condition in umin, yani if it's fairly safe and certain that that's what's going to happen, that it will be a good season. وإنما يخرس التمر والعنب للحاجة. So al-khars is to estimate how much is there. So customarily, when the dates are still in the palm trees, or when the grapes are still in the vineyard, you're not going to harvest them right then and there, even though they're ready. So there has to be a process called al-khars, or estimation. In the longer commentary, it says that someone who's arif, someone who's an expert in estimating, like, they look up at the palm tree and they can tell how many dates are up there. So they go tree by tree and estimate what the haul will be, what the harvest will be, and then based upon that number, then they figure out how much they have to pay in terms of zakah. And the same thing for the grapes. He says lil haja, because it's necessary. Otherwise, how are you going to figure it out? ويضم الصيح إلى غيره والكل على حكمه. So also, certain categories can be added to another. So all types of dates, whatever type they are, they're all added. As he says here, وَالتَّمْرُ بِأَنْوَاعِ صِنْفٍ وَالْقَطَّانِ صِنْفٍ وَالْبُرُّ وَالشَّعِيرُ وَالسُّلْتُ صِنْفٍ وَمَا سِوَى ذَلِكَ أَصْنَافٌ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. So dates, all different types, whether it's majjul, or whether it's saqalli, or whatever it might be, it's all put together, they're all one category, and you pay out from that. وَالْقَطَّانِ صِنْفٍ, and then the 7 categories of peas that we talked about are all one category. And then al-burr wa-sha'ir wa-sultu sinf. And then wheat and barley and anything of its derivatives are also one category. So you count the 500 or the 653 kilograms from all of that. وَمَا سِوَى ذَلِكَ أَصْنَافٌ. And then everything outside of that are separate categories. So the olive oil is, olives are not added to any other, they're not added to the sesame to see if you have 653 kilograms. So if you have 650 kilograms of olives, then you pay out in olive oil. If you have anything less, you don't have to pay it out. Even if you have another 400 kilograms in sesame, you don't add it to the olives to do the nisab. So that's what it means by mixing the categories in terms of the amounts. So that concludes the section about crops and harvest. Now we go into Masarif al-Zakah or Masrif al-Zakah, which means who are the ones who are the recipients? What are the categories that are recipients of the zakah? And obviously this goes back to the verse in Surah At-Tawbah, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْغَارِمِينَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. So those 8 categories. So he says, رضي الله عنه, يجب تفرقتها في محل الوجوب وهو موضع الثمار والحبوب والأنعام وفي العين حيث كان المالك ولو مسافرا إن لم يكن وكل من يخرجها في وطنه أو اضطر لها ولا يجوز نقلها لمسافة القصر فأبعد إلا لأعدم فينقل الأكثر وأجزأت لمثلهم مع الكراهة لا لدونهم. So he said the distribution of the zakah is obligatory في محل الوجوب, from wherever the places where you are. That's where it should be distributed. There's going to be some exceptions he's going to mention in a second. وهو موضع الثمار. So in terms of crops, where the crops are grown. والحبوب والأنعام, and also the seeds and the animals, wherever they're raised. وفي العين حيث كان المالك, and in العين or النقد, cash, currency, wherever the owner is. ولو مسافرا إن لم يكن وكل من يخرجها في وطنه أو اضطر لها. And if he's not around, the owner, the one who has paid zakat, and he's traveling, then he deputizes or makes an agent of someone who's going to distribute it on his or her behalf. ولا يجوز نقلها لمسافة القصر فأبعد. And it's not permissible to transport it the travel distance or more from where you are, from where the crops are, from where the animals are, from where the owner is of the one who has to pay the zakah, who owns the cash or the currency. Masafat Qasr, as we said, 48 miles or 84 kilometers. إلا لأعدم فينقل الأكثر وأجزأت لمثلهم مع الكراهة لا لدونهم. The only exception to this is if it's going to someone who is in a worse state than the people where you are. That would be better. هذا يندب. وأجزأت لمثلهم مع الكراهة. If it's going to people who are in a similar state to where you are, the recipients that is, then it's permissible مع الكراهة, though it's disliked. Because the people around you have more right to it than the people far away. لا لدونهم. But if the people around you, in other words, the would-be recipients of the zakah, are in a worse state than the ones you want to send them who are far away in Masafat al-Qasr, the travel distance or further, then it's not permissible. So people who obviously there's a lot of zakat that goes to other countries, especially those who live in the West, and you can make an argument, a reasonable one, that they're in a worse state. They're ma'dumun, maybe they have nothing, and here maybe people have something. So I don't want to get too much into that, but that's the opinion of the Maliki. If they're in a worse state, then you can send it to them. وَالنِّيَّةُ شَرْطٌ فِيهَا. And the niyyah, or the intention, is a condition of validity for the zakat. So one has to make the intention. So if you gave something away and you had no intention behind it, or you didn't have intention for zakat, you can't sort of retroact, or make it retroactive. I'll make that for zakat. That I gave. So because the niyyah, the intention wasn't there. ولا تجزئ إن قدمها إلا في العين والماشية بك شهر. And it's not permissible to do it before its time of obligation. In other words, the year passed for whatever category. إلا في العين والماشية. Except in ayn, which is cash, currency. والماشية. Mashia means the animals. Camels, cows, goats. Except by like about a month. كشهر. يعني a month and 3 days, something like that. But not more than that, not 2 months. وإنما تدفع لمسكين وفقير وعامل ومؤلف وقن يعتق منها وولاء للمسلمين ومدين فيما يحبس فيه ومجاهد وغريب وإن غنيا ببلده لا ولا مسلف. So here are the basic categories. Al-Miskin. The Malikiya consider the Miskin to be al-Ma'doom. So someone who has nothing. وفقير. Faqir means the one who doesn't have qut as-sana. Faqir, or the indigent person, or the poor, or the one who's in need, is the one who doesn't have enough to cover their basic food, shelter, everything like that for a year. So they're good for the next month, but after that, there's nothing going on. That's someone who's a faqir. So there's no expectation of them receiving any sort of salary or payments or pension or anything like that. وعامل. العامل عليها. العامل, the one who is working to distribute the zakat or to collect the zakat. Since there's an overhead expense, if this is done professionally, then there has to be people who are doing it, so they can collect a salary from that. And they are not recipients of the zakat in the sense that they need to be faqir or miskin, but they're working for a salary, so what they collect is actually not zakat for them, it's their salary. But it's paid from the zakat that is collected as overhead expense. ومؤلف, يعني مؤلف في قلوبهم. There's two opinions in the school about who they are. One is they're the non-Muslim who يرجى إسلامه, that there is a hope that they will become Muslim, and that giving them some of the zakat money would be a way for them to consider Islam. So it's not a bribe, but it's like a يعني مؤانسة, يعني it's a way to kind of, you know, lighten their burden and show that Muslims care about them and so forth. So there's no sort of stipulation, okay, I'm going to give you zakat, you have to become Muslim now. لا إكراه في الدين. They have to decide for themselves. The ones who went with this opinion then were two further opinions. Some said هذا قد انقضى. Some said, well, that was during the time of the Prophet ﷺ only, not anymore. And the reason they said that is that was when there was a need for more Muslims to come into Islam. Now there is no more need for more Muslims to come to Islam, so we don't have to pay zakat. لِلْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُم. The other opinion, which I think is the closer opinion to the correct opinion, is no, it's still a category that remains, because it's not about them bringing us to Islam to help us, it's about us helping them. So if that's the intention, then the mu'allafati qulubuhum is a category that remains. The other opinion is no, it's for the one who's newly Muslim. That's the second opinion. So either one. وَقِنٍّ يُعْتَقُ مِنْهَا, and also prior to pre-modern age, people who are in a state of bondage, the zakah would be given to free them from their state of bondage. وَوَلَاؤُهُ لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ. What that means is, the rule in the deen is if you pay to free someone out of captivity, then their wala, or their, I would call it inheritance loyalty, is to that person. So if they die and they leave no heirs, and then you're the one who freed them by way of paying for that, into wali al-na'ma. Wali al-na'ma means then you would inherit from them. So here it's saying not the one who pays the zakah is not entitled to that. وَلَاؤُهُ لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ. So it would go to Bayt al-Mal. It would go to the treasury. If they died and leave no heirs, then that would go to the treasury, and not to the person who specifically paid the zakah to free them. وَمَدِينٍ فِي مَا يُحْبَسُ فِيهِ. And also someone in a state of debt to the amount that they would go to debtor's prison for. We don't have debtor's prison anymore. But anyone who is in a state of debt is unable to pay their debt reasonably, then they are entitled also to receive zakat to lift that burden. There's some other conditions, I think, in terms of someone who's paying a debt, namely that they're not in debt for something haram. not because they have a gambling debt that they got from Vegas or Atlantic City, unless they now have made tawbah and they realize it was a mistake, and now we're trying to help them get out of that situation. ومجاهد يعني مجاهد في سبيل الله. Again, in pre-modern days, there were no professional armies. If people had to defend their city or defend their deen, they would have to equip themselves. And this would include people who were out on the frontiers guarding the borders and things like this. There was no professional kind of system in place for them to get to support them. So the zakat would also go to people in such places. So al-mujahid fi sabilillah means someone who is in a state of protecting the borders or actively defending them. وغريب وإن غني ببلده لا ولا مسلف. And someone who is gharib, which means a traveler, not home, ran out of cash, they have money at home, but they lost their wallet, no ATM card, so they can't go to the bank, nothing. What do we do? Then they are in a position to receive the zakah. وإن غنيا ببلده, even if he is wealthy in his own country, ولا مسلف, right? Not taking it as a loan. If he wants to take it as a loan someone and pay them back later, he can do that, but that's not called zakat. Zakat is to give it to him, and then there's no expectation that it's going to pay it back because he's gharib, he's lost, or in a situation where they need zakat. ويشترط فيما عدا المؤلف إسلام. In all of the categories except the mu'allaf, as we said, the one who could be non-Muslim, they have to be Muslim. وحرية, except for the bondsmen, right? That have to be free. وعدم بنوة لهاشم. عدم بنوة لهاشم, and also not to be from Banu Hashim. And Banu Hashim are أولاد فاطمة وأولاد Al-Abbas رضي الله عنهم. So in the Maliki school, if you are from the line of Al-Abbas or the line of Fatima, or Hassan or Hussein, يعني Ahl al-Bayt, then zakat is seen as something that is purification, that which is from awsakh nas, like it's the laundry of people's wealth. So when you rinse the laundry out and the stuff that comes out, that's how it's seen. So the people of the household of the Prophet ﷺ, specifically Banu Hashim, are seen to be above that. It would be seen as, because of their qaraba, their position of a family lineage to the Prophet ﷺ, that it's not appropriate for them to collect the zakah. However, he says, واستحسن الأشياخ دفعها لهاشمي لمنعه حقه من بيت المال في هذا الزمن. There used to be a time when people of the household of the Prophet ﷺ, Banu Hashim, would receive some type of stipend from the state if they had the means to do so. If that stipend is not there and they are in need, then al-ashyakh, he said some of ashyakh means al-mutaakhirin. The later scholars said then it's okay then to pay some of the zakat to people from the household of Banu Hashim because they're not receiving a stipend from the government. ويجوز إخراج الذهب عن الفضة والعكس. And it is permissible in terms of al-naqdain, gold and silver. So if you have gold and you want to pay it out in silver, or if silver you want to pay it out in gold, or if you have dollars and you want to pay it out in euros, or if you have euros and you want to pay it out in sterling pound, يجوز. All of that is permissible. ويكره دفع القيم. And it is disliked to pay the value of something. We're talking about crops and animals. You pay the animal itself, not its value. ويجزئ دفع لجائر أخذها كرها باسم الزكاة. And يجزئ, not that it's permissible, but you have paid your zakah if a ja'ir, someone who's a tyrant or a despot or in a position to take the zakah forcefully, and he says, I'm taking this and it's for zakah. And you have a feeling that it's not going to be for zakah. Yujzi'u means, if they've done that to you, then khalas, so what can you do? You've paid the zakah, at least from your end. If they're going to usurp it in a way that's wrong, that's their problem, or that's their calamity, not yours. وَلَا يُجْزِئُ حَسْبُهَا عَلَى مَدِينِهِ الْمُعْدَمِ كإعطائها له مع التواطؤ على أخذها. He said it's not permissible or it's not acceptable. Someone who is in a debt to you who has nothing. Why? Because this is your way of saying, I gave him zakat, now he's going to pay me back. So he has nothing, he's in debt to you. You give him the zakat, and you said, okay, now time for me to pay me back, and then you got back your money. What happened in the process? You got out of paying the zakat. So this is a type of hila. Also, but not mentioned here, when someone gets rid of the animals, or let's say you have 40 sheep, and you say, oh, you know what, my wife, I want to give you one of these sheep. Just, it's gift. Take it in your backyard and play with him, and then now you only have 39, so you don't have to pay the sheep. Then that year passes, and then the next day you said, oh, you know what, give me the sheep back. Now you have 40 again. So at the time of the year passing, you only have 39, not responsible for zakat. So this is a type of hila. And the Maliki were very strict about this. Anyone who uses a hila, who uses or tries to use a legal loophole stratagem in order to get out of doing something that's obligatory, will be obligated to pay nonetheless. So even though min zahir al-wada', from the apparent kind of look of things or the situation, they're not responsible, but indeed because of their corrupt intention, they are made responsible. ويحرم تأخيرها مع إمكان الإخراج, and it's haram to delay paying it when you have the ability to do so. وندب الاستنابة فيها وإيثار المضطر والله أعلم. And also it's recommended al-istinaba. In other words, that you are not the one directly dealing with the categories al-faqir wal-miskin, but al-istinaba, you'd have someone else do it. Because then that would be closer to you, further away from riyah, and then feeling you have a feeling of men or a feeling of gratitude over the one who received it. And I would say it's best even not to know who the recipients are. That's what he means here. Istinaba, someone else determines who's going to receive it, so you don't even know who they are, especially if they pray with you in the masjid and it's in the same town, so you don't have this, and they don't know who you are. You don't know who they are, they don't know who you are, so that the relationship is not based upon, I gave you, you owe me. That's the idea. ندب الاستنابة. وإيثار المضطر. And also إيثار المضطر. Muttar means one who's really in a bad situation. So unlike in the Shafi'i school, in the Maliki school, you can give it all the zakat to one category. It doesn't have to be evenly distributed across the 8. So if someone is muttar in a bad situation, you can give them zakat and not have to give it to someone else. Wallahu a'lam. And Allah knows best. So I think we will stop here. Inshallah, the next time, zakat al-fitr, and then we go on to fasting, the next pillar of the deen. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.